Hey, 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 everybody. Great to see you on this Sunday morning over here in the Big Apple in New York City. So, how's everyone doing out there? It's really great to see you. Thank you so much for joining us. So, we're introducing a new series today. We're very excited about this. So, now you guys are going to be getting for the foreseeable future 2 weekly series on Son of Sam. Manny Mondays continues as always with the hardest hitting looks, with the best guests that you could possibly ever imagine on Son of Sam. No one can even come close. And then, of course, Eric, the great Eric Galati, and I, in deep discussion last week, we're talking and we decided that what we are about to embark on today, Psychiatric Sunday, is probably going to be one of the most important series on Son of Sam ever done. And listen, I'm very excited about it. I don't have a huge flowery intro. I want to say thanks to everybody out there in the chat. We got a lot to get to today. Everyone, please interact. Please ask questions. We'll get you guys calling in if you want as well. But I want to get the man of the hour in here today. I want to get him, and I want to get him in on this intro. Well, I'm about to hit you up. We got for you the man that you all know, and I know you all love. We have the one, the only Eric Galati. Eric, how are you, sir?
Very well, with the only Manny Grossman.
Thank you, Eric. And I gotta tell you, my friend, I could not be happier that you're my partner on this new embarkation that we're taking together.
Oh, it's always great, even when I just stream in. Your work is fantastic. Without you, somebody might not have ever been motivated to release all the documentation, which are basically the audio tapes and any other written word from archives.
Absolutely. And I want to whoever put out these Queen's DA tapes, because it was not me, and I am not going to ever take credit for it. In fact, I am very happy that it wasn't me that got these, because it takes the whole controversial issue of Manny Grossman and his video series out of the equation. I don't believe these Queen's DA tapes and letters would have been accepted, oddly enough, because I ended up being vindicated. But I don't think that these Queen's DA tapes would have been accepted if I had put them out. I think people would have said, nah, they're biased. They're done by a process member. So it was great that someone else put these out, Eric, because now we can dispassionately analyze. And of course, that's what we're doing today.
Yeah.
So, Eric, why don't you tell the audience a little bit about what David Berkowitz was doing from 1979 to 1981?
Well, David Berkowitz actually was writing letters that are no less than excellent. He has a command of the English language. His thoughts are coherent, no matter whether he's speaking, according to some people, in a deranged manner, a confused manner, or just as, let's say, normal as you and I. And what is quite interesting is that the man himself is writing to his psychiatrist 99.9% of the time.
Mm-hmm.
The one time he doesn't, I think, is to his, I don't know, she's a sister-in-law, Susan, I guess.
I think it's his aunt, actually, or aunt or cousin. I'm not quite sure.
She's not, well, the aunt is Mary, who lives in Flushing, Mary Sugar. And the only other letter is an angry one, a very angry one, which actually has hints of his anger toward people and life and dogs, to McGraw Jr. of the McGraw Hill Publishing.
Right. In fact, this treasure trove of information starts out with that letter. And
yeah, that's the first letter. And
right.
It's put under the psychiatric letters.
Exactly. Yeah.
It's not Berkowitz letters. It's put in the psychiatric letters because it's connected to the fact, and here's something I don't like. There can be perhaps good psychiatrists, but right away, Abrahamsen hasn't even done a thorough analysis of the man, and he's writing a book.
True. But when did the book come out? The book might have come out. Maybe these letters were meant to be the analysis that he eventually was going to turn into a book.
Came out in 1982. But Berkowitz refers to him later, we'll see, as to writing a book and hoping that there wouldn't be legal clash with another book that's being written by someone whom he doesn't name so far in the letters we're looking at right now.
Right, and that person is Lawrence Klausner, and of course, these letters are an absolute veritable treasure trove, not just into the psychiatric look of David Berkowitz, but for several other reasons. So, Eric, why don't we just get into our presentation
Yeah,
because we have a
and I
lot to get to.
and I think it's excellent how you have, we're covering 4 dates, but it's interesting that you chose, your logic is excellent, Manny. Sequential logic. You chose the 4th letter of today, the 4th date, first, August
Right.
2nd.
And so today's theme is why I did it. Okay. Now, every psychiatric Sunday is going to have a different theme. In fact, next week might be why I did it part 2. We're gonna do this as we go along. But I figured that we've been talking about David Berkowitz, and of course, people have been talking about this cult thesis now for the past 40 years. And really, very few of us, if anyone, knew that these letters were hanging out the whole time, Eric. The whole entire time that we were all arguing with each other, the letters where he goes into in great stark detail things that we should know have been sitting there. So
And these are his letters.
These are his letters and his writing.
They could have been released before, because it's not according to, if the Hippocratic Oath means anything, where a physician could not release them. These are his letters written in his own hand, not the psychiatrist letters. And I don't think Maury Terry mentions.
No, and that's another case of journalistic malpractice, because
Did he
there's
know
so
it?
much. I don't know what he knew, unfortunately, but there's so much in these letters that we can glean from. And the fact is, I could have started with any topic and it had been interesting, but why not get right into why I did it? Because we're all talking about cults and getaway drivers and who was his accomplices. I think we should just listen to the man himself and figure out why, first things first, why he did it. So we're going to get into that
What
today.
I have to say once again, it's excellent why I did it, and you knew just which paragraphs or entire letter to get for why I did it. Bravo. Go
Thank
forward.
you. So thank you very much, Eric. So before we get into the actual letters, and we'll give you the dates so you guys can follow along. And if Ruby is watching. Ruby, do me a favor, please, Ruby, if you can, with much appreciation for all the great work that you do, Ruby. Please put up the link to where people can download these psychiatry letters themselves, because, we should all be working off the same information. And I believe, like, this is open source public information. Why should I be the only one analyzing it? You guys should be reading it too.
Mm-hmm.
All right. But these letters are super duper important. And this is why I believe that these letters are important. So, although contradictory in some spots, and we're going to see, Eric, you've noticed some contradictions even in the letters we're going to talk about today.
Oh, God, yes. And therefore contradictory in the man himself.
Correct. I believe still, though, that these letters are Berkowitz at his most open and truthful than we have seen before. Now, if you guys disagree with this statement, then you should turn off this station right now and go watch, an interview with Maury Terry from 1992, because I'm just going to make this assumption. And if I'm wrong, I'm wrong. But I believe that this is the most open we've ever seen Berkowitz. He didn't think these letters were going to be made public. He says very matter-of-factly that he's being completely truthful. Now, I know that, he's Berkowitz. We don't know. But the level of detail in these letters and the things that we could already confirm, like he talks about his friends as childhood. He talks about Lenny Dapolito and Jeff H. and Ed Snedeker and all these people that we've already confirmed existed and were his friends. He, I believe, is being the most truthful in these letters that we've seen before. And these letters offer many insights into what led to his crimes. And we're going to be dealing with that today. These letters also tell of his tactics to commit the shootings, as well as his mindset during the spree. This is extremely important. We never have heard this information before. Certainly not from David Berkowitz. We've had a lot of other people analyzing himself and saying what his motives were and the reasons for the crimes and how long he had planned them out and so on and so forth. But we never actually saw Berkowitz say it. These letters also show many other aspects of Berkowitz the man: his business dealings, his family, his thoughts on childhood, friends, the avenues, Eric, of research and investigation that we can do with these letters is so rich.
It's never ending.
Never ending. I can call up John Comparetto, right, and ask him about a specific passage where Berkowitz writes about his friends at Co-op City, and I could ask Comparetto and get Comparetto on the show to respond. That's the beauty of what we have all achieved the last year and a half together.
And we want his other friends who haven't come forth yet.
Right. We want to get Lenny Dapolito. Right. We want to get Lenny Dapolito. Now, there is another person named in these letters who I did a report on. I couldn't name him. He didn't want to be named, but he is in these letters as well. And that is my report from a friend of David Berkowitz, which I did a couple of months ago, and I just recently reposted. I believe, and this is my last thing, and then Eric, I want your thoughts on these letters. I believe, and you may disagree with me, and I'm saying you, Eric, and you in the audience, because remember, even though I am an authority on the Son of Sam crimes, I have never once claimed that I know the truth about Son of Sam. I have my theories like everyone else. I have my theories based on solid research that I've done personally. But I have never once said that I know the truth or that I am the person telling you what exactly happened. I'm only telling you what I believe based on evidence. But I believe, and you may disagree, that barring a tell-all in 2022 from David Berkowitz himself, that these letters are the best and most realistic hope we have of making sense of the Son of Sam spree. So, Eric, before we get into the letters themselves, why don't you give the audience a sense of why you feel these letters are important?
I agree with you that they are the best that we have so far for making sense of this. The best. And I just thought of this morning at the breakfast table. These letters themselves were making me reflect upon a certain subject spoken about by Fred Deagle and Wheat Carr. Now, I'm not alluding that there's this cult. I'm not saying that, but we're going to get later to a certain metaphor, a figure that's used and is spoken about by all of these people, including Berkowitz. But these letters were dealing with a man, even with the contradictions, he writes very well.
He's an extremely good writer. I mean, Maury Terry saying that he couldn't write the Son of Sam letters, it's journalistic malpractice.
No, in fact, I have an interpretation. Well, I should say it now. The Son of Sam letters, in my opinion, are kind of an autistic stream of consciousness.
Yes.
With metaphors. They're an artistic stream of consciousness. And I'll get to it later, what I happen to think.
Are you saying autistic or artistic?
Artistic. It's a stream of consciousness. It's like an autistic creation.
Oh, right. Yes. Okay.
Because and of course, you just put up his tactics. We're going to be getting to contradictions about his tactics.
I know.
Because he writes so well. It's so clear. You say to yourself, but wait a minute. This isn't what you said before or after.
Right. So there definitely are contradictions. And of course, then it brings up the whole issue, whether he's being truthful here. But I think when taken as a totality, these letters point to very much a Berkowitz that was wanting to tell his story in the most truthful way that he personally could. And one thing I noticed, Eric, and maybe I just haven't gotten to that passage yet, but nowhere in these letters does he ever mention John Carr, except for saying that he didn't know him. He specifically writes that, and nowhere in these letters does it mention Untermeyer Park. Nowhere in these letters does it mention the process, a satanic cult, other accomplices, anything other than him alone committing these sprees.
Mm-hmm.
So yes, his poem Fragments. Everybody remembers when I read Fragments. Excellent poem. In fact, I should go get that poem and read it for us on the air. I should have thought that. Anyway,
does he say in these 4 letters we have, he doesn't know John Carr, or is that later?
That's later. But I'm just saying, like, what these letters don't show is any of Maury's thesis. There's nothing in these letters that proves one iota of anything out of Maury's book. And I found that to be extremely interesting as well. All right, Eric. So listen, why don't we just get into it? So for those of you in the audience, we are going to be dealing with 4 letters today. We're going to be starting with August 2nd, 1979. Okay, for those of you who want to find these. Then we're going to be dealing with March 20th, and I'm going out of order because it actually works out narratively that way. We're dealing with May 16th, 1979, and then we are dealing with August 1st, 1979. Now, the August 2nd, 1979 letter is in my opinion, sorry, August 2nd, the August 2nd letter. Now, this is the entire letter, okay? Now, most of it is not useful for our discussion. It talks about my scatterbrained mother. She is a woman who's scared of her own shadow. She can't cope with life. My Aunt Mary in Flushing, blah, blah, blah. It's these last 3 paragraphs that talk to us about what exactly he was doing in Son of Sam. And I think that these 3 paragraphs are the 3 paragraphs that are going to set the tone, not only for today's show, but really for all of Psychiatric Sunday.
Yeah.
I'm gonna take reading this one, Eric. You could read the next.
Okay.
I told you yesterday how upsetting noise is to me. However, I think I left something out. Let me make it clear that I'm not trying to use Grossman, Carr, Cassara, or anyone else as a scapegoat. I am the killer, true, but I just didn't do it for the sake of gallivanting. I didn't kill for the hell of it or as a joke. Very possibly I did try to bring attention to myself, but my actions were also a result of an intense amount of pressure and frustration that developed around and inside of me. I just couldn't stifle my built-up anger any longer. So in all honesty, these people helped put the match to the fuse, so to speak. Dynamite isn't too dangerous if it is stored and handled properly. However, it is very explosive material and under a great deal of pressure. If put into the wrong hands or if the fuse is ignited, an explosion results. This is true for people. We all have the potential for violence. Therefore, under the right circumstances, any one of us could become a killer. So, Eric, tell me your thoughts on that.
Okay. It's interesting how he does implicate in a very odd psychotic way Carr, Cassara, and Grossman.
Right. He says it's not their fault, but then he goes on to say that they were the match that put the fuse to the...
Yeah. And later on, we will see how Carr, Cassara, and Grossman fit in my opinion, as different types of entities, but not human beings.
Very good, Eric. So, any other thoughts on this particular 3 passages?
I myself, he attempts to normalize and make an excuse for his actions, and I do not believe that insanity is God-given and any one of us could kill.
I don't either. I think that that's crazy. Now I guess I could kill if I was trying to defend my family, but it would be for a noble reason. This guy's saying under the right set of circumstances, but he's conflating his crimes here with premeditated first-degree murder with people just snapping and losing it and committing an act of violence. I mean, he's equating those two, and to me, that's insane.
And then he says how upsetting noise is.
Right.
I mean, he's not in solitary confinement.
Yeah. How did he deal with prison?
Yeah, he's not in a solitary housing unit known as SHU. I mean, the clinging of the doors, the sirens, it's not, unless he has to be captive in order to support noise. He has to be kept in order to support it.
Right. All right, so let's carry on because we have a lot to do. All right, so this is an important letter. This is March 20th, 1979.
Very important.
Dear Dr. Abrahamsen, Sam Carr and the demons. Yes, it was all a hoax, a silly hoax, well planned and thought out. I just never thought that this demon story would carry out so much. At the time I was committing the crimes, notice he said he was committing the crimes. I was committing the crimes, the Son of Sam shootings, and there he goes saying I was committing the Son of Sam shootings. I felt guilty unconsciously. Therefore, I needed to somehow justify everything in my mind, condone it, and somehow mentally convince myself that there was a meaning. purpose, and justification for my acts. This is where the demon story came into being. It gave me the mental motivation and the mental justification I needed at the time. However, deep down inside, I knew I was the real demon, so to speak. It was just me, myself, and I. Where was that passage the whole time that we were all arguing over the ultimate evil, Eric? It was just me, myself, and I. This is the reason I pleaded guilty, because I was. And the going berserk in the courtroom was an act too. I was trying to convince people that I was totally possessed. It was a desperate attempt, but it was just a case of pseudo possession, imaginary possession. Let's say I needed to be possessed. I wanted to be possessed. This is extremely important here, okay? These passages coming up.
And he is in a way possessed, though.
Right.
Because he allows his mind to be obsessed with Ka, Kasara, and Grossman as being the matches that light him.
Correct. Now, I already had theorized that Berkowitz learned all his religious terminology from being a born-again Christian in Louisville, Kentucky. Was it Louisville? Yeah, I believe it was Louisville.
Kentucky, he writes.
Right. I said this months ago on my station. I said that's where he learned all his stuff. I mean, it's clear. I mean, how obvious is it, right? Maury Terry had the Son of Sam letter writer going to Catholic schools and having a Scottish father. Listen to what Berkowitz says right here. In addition, the ideas about demons came to me when I attended a Baptist church in Louisville. There it is. He's saying what I told you guys 3 months ago. Kentucky, when I was in the service. All the sermons were about demons, sin, hell, eternal damnation. I believe this also had a bad effect on my life and mind. In addition, I read numerous books such as Billy Graham's Angels, The Exorcist, The Omen, Rosemary's Babies, Hostage to the Devil by Malachi Martin, and many other religious books on the spirit world and the occult. After reading these books, I knew then that this would be a good excuse to commit serious crimes. Perhaps the best book you could possibly read to understand my situation would be Occult Bondage and Deliverance by Kurt Koch, PhD. This book is published by Kriegel Publications, blah, blah, blah. Kurt Koch is a Christian counselor, and the second half of the book is written by Dr. Alfred Lechler, a counselor who has dealt with many people who claim to be possessed. Dr. Lechler is not religious nut, but a professional. In his chapter called Neurosis or the Demonic, the subject of pseudo-possession is brought up. This fits me exactly right down to a T. All right, so Eric, I have ordered that book. I'm gonna get it this Wednesday. And I'm gonna read those pages first. You must read this book. Doesn't this sound just like Son of Sam letter? You must read this book, right?
You must read this book. You must see this. You must
It must be the people. You must it's geared for Christian psychologists and people in the mental health field, blah, blah, blah. It's somewhat agnostic, but I once had very strong beliefs in religion, the occult, and the supernatural. So right here, people are going to go, there it is. There's his admission that he was in the process. It says, I had very strong beliefs in religion and the occult. Well, we already saw that Weekar, when she was talking about the occult, was talking about drug culture. I wonder what Berkowitz is referring to when he talks about.
This is quite interesting, and this is where I would almost like to really tap into John Comparetto also later on, because John Comparetto said he was a Bible thumper, up in your face, talking about Christ our Lord fanatically and everything.
Right.
But yet in these letters, we see that he also had an obsession with the occult and what I'll call inverted supernatural, the dark supernatural. And it's as if he merged together Christ and Satan.
Right.
Now, of course, somebody could immediately say, hey, isn't that like the process church of the final judgment of following both Christ and Lucifer? It is interesting, but it's not the first time people have done this. But we're dealing with a man who is a sociopath, becomes a psychopath because he wants to change, can't change, so he becomes the avenging angel. He takes on the role of God where he can take people's lives and harm others and so forth.
Very, very good point. Yes. So, Mrs. Fran Mills, from the head of Attica Prison Psychiatric Unit, Department of Mental Hygiene, personally believes that you are one of the best in your field. She has great respect and admiration for you.
She's talking about Abrahamsen,
Correct.
the psychiatrist. By the way, the reason why I also am skeptical about this Abrahamsen is because he claims to have written a psychiatric book on Lee Harvey Oswald, who was dead at the time he wrote the book, and on Richard Nixon, and he never had them as patients.
Yeah, you shouldn't be doing that if you're a legitimate psychiatrist.
Yeah,
Absolutely not.
you know,
See, we're not. See, one. I just want to make. Of course, I should have made this disclaimer right at the beginning. Eric and I are not trained psychiatrists. So we're not giving detailed clinical diagnosis here. We're just speaking as human beings who can look at writings and comment on them. And of course, we're calling this Psychiatric Sunday because these were letters to his psychiatrist.
And Berkowitz is aware of making money off of crime in his letter to McGraw.
Exactly, but he seems to not really want to make money off of it. We got to give Berkowitz credit off that. He's a little bit pissed off that other people are making money. Not that he isn't, but he just felt like the whole thing was cheap. But even
wasn't he insisting though with his cousin Susan about a business deal for a book?
Yeah, and we'll deal with all that because there seemed to be a lot of intrigue with his family, like if you listen to his dad's tape, and we're going to listen to it eventually on the air. His father's obsessed with money. His father's like, yeah, I had those letters and I could have gotten a pretty penny for them too had I sold them. Like, he's all pissed off that he didn't sell them. He's always talking about the value of things. There's a lot of money obsession in Berkowitz's family. And
his father is no different than the Filipino-Italian chap from California who eventually killed Gianni Versace. His father in the Philippines set up a business deal to make money off of the son's murder, being a serial killer and eventually killing Versace.
Right. And we'll deal with all that on another show. Berkowitz's intrigue with his family about money. All very interesting stuff. But our next letter.
Terry never brought up the family, his family.
That's journalistic malpractice again, because if Terry had said that he had his aunt's daughter lived on Hall's Terrace in Yonkers, which is a stone's throw from Pine Street, and if Maury Terry had told us that his cousin Robert lived on Roberts Avenue, which is a stone's throw from Pine Street, imagine how history would have been different in this particular story. I mean, all of these
proximity of this and that and Untermeyer Park and Gardens, nothing wrong with that. But where it falls flat on its face is that he's living a walk away
from two relatives.
From two relatives.
It's unbelievable. How did we not know this as a Son of Sam community? And we'll deal with this as we go along. But all right, our next letter, guys.
Are we doing August 1st also?
No, we're on May 16th right now.
No, but we're not doing it, or we are?
No, we are. Yeah. We're on May 16th right now.
May 16th. I left it in the kitchen. I'll be right back.
That's fine, Eric. I'll take you off. When you get back, I'll put you back on. So, Eric, so May 16th is an extremely interesting letter, but only 3 paragraphs for our purposes. Starting paragraph 2, 3, and 4. I've done quite a bit of self-analysis, and I am now mentally aware as to the reasons why I committed most of these crimes. I've known the, quote, true, unquote, motives for quite some time, but I deliberately, quite some time. There's that letter from his, again, I'm going to refer always back to his letters from his apartment. A satanic cult that has been around for quite some time, right? The true motives for quite some time, but I deliberately kept them below the surface because of my fear in hurting certain persons. I wonder who those persons were. In other words, I did know why I pulled the trigger. I did know why I deliberately killed. I knew who the person was whom I wanted to hurt, on whom I wanted revenge. Now that's interesting, okay? Because now, of course, all the conspiracy heads are going to go, oh, that's it. Oh, that's it. That's the evidence I needed. There it is. I knew the person who was whom I wanted to hurt. The victims were all related. I don't think we can glean that from here, but if you want to go down that road, you're certainly welcome to. This is the nut meat for me, okay? Because this is what I believe is the origin story of Son of Sam. Remember, I have come up with the theory, and this theory was made way before. And again, it's a theory. It's not fact. It's not what I'm telling you is the truth. It's a theory. This theory was made up way, way before I ever saw these letters. I came up with the theory that Berkowitz started Son of Sam in 1974.
And I agree with you.
Now, look at what he writes here. These shootings were planned long before they took place. Nobody knows this. Nobody knows the reason but me, and perhaps one day, you. So in these 3 paragraphs, he writes he knows why he killed. He deliberately kept it below. He knows why he pulled the trigger. It says he knew the person whom I wanted to hurt. But I think it says here on whom I wanted revenge. I think he meant a generalized person, a weeman, right? The weeman. But this is the nut meat for me here. And I see that Lazarus is laughing at my at the nut meat thing. He says here the shootings were planned long before they took place. I mean, that provides a lot of backing up to my theory, I believe.
And also, I knew who the persons were whom I wanted to hurt. I wanted revenge.
Right.
Now, what is the timeline of this, though? Because that paragraph of May 16th will contradict what we come to later on. This man has it all well planned.
Right.
He says he knows who the persons are.
Right.
Does that include Donna Vascarician and the other?
Donna Loria. No, I believe you. We were talking about this when you were when you were off the air there for a second. I believe that he was speaking symbolically here, not that he was talking about a specific person. I believe he was speaking on whom I wanted revenge. Right.
Yes. In other words, Weeman.
Right. Weeman.
He was speaking of a person typologically.
Correct.
Person.
Correct. I believe that's what he meant in this passage here. I knew who the person was whom I wanted to hurt, on whom I wanted revenge. I don't think you could. I think you could interpret this in a conspiratorial way, but the simple fact is there's absolutely zero evidence that any of these victims were related to each other or that he knew them in any way, shape, or form. So, and just finding a person in the phone book wouldn't work, because what if the person that you're finding in the phone book named Virginia Vascarician, you get to her and she's a 7-foot tall lesbian with 500-pound muscles?
That's right.
You're not right. You're not going to do that. You're not going to do that. Do it like that.
So we get back to the typology, and maybe the Netu family and anyone else on Yonkers from 74 to 76 are the foundation type of whom he would later go after.
It's possible. It's very possible. But he also talks a lot in these letters, not in the ones we're going to read today, about, how he never was able to form relationships with women, and he never really was able to have, a closeness with them. So I think it was more on the women really aspect than on the people on Wicker. But this was something that I wanted to show, because again, why I did it. Today is why I did it. And we've already seen that he did it because of intense pressure building up, noise, right? The fuses of the Sam Carr, Cassara, and Glassman. And now we're seeing him say, and again, this is only if you believe this, right? Only if you believe these words here. He's saying here that the shootings were planned long before they took place. I think that's a revelation, personally.
Yeah, and well, how did he plan them long before? Were they already in his mind, or were there actually writings where he would just scribble and decide his tactic?
Right. I don't know the answer to that question. It's a very, very good question,
And
and
if the killing, here's where you and I might differ, okay? Because it's good to differ. It doesn't mean we're against each other. You are verging toward the fact that he was alone,
mhm,
killings. I say it is very, very possible he was alone, but I say there might have been others later. This
mhm.
is why I believe this. I believe, as you do firmly, that 1974 is it's indelible, the memory of the NATOs. That's when that began, the attack.
Late 74, July
July,
74, and he came back
July,
from the army in June.
in June. Oh, you found that out?
Someone told us this the other day on the air.
Oh, because you and I were wondering yesterday, when did he come out? I talked about proximity.
I just remembered that someone, I think, put in the chat that
Okay,
he was
so
demobilized June 74.
okay, so if he was demobilized in June 1974, this is where I get the feeling of him being with others. He has no time to see this family in order to be obsessed with what he can't have.
Right.
So if it's not him in July of 74, which now I will say it wasn't, I want to know, how was he the continuance in 76 of what took place in 74? Who was the personage in 74 that then passed on the gauntlet to Berkowitz to be the protagonist of harassing?
Right.
Somebody,
Or just stood in the background and still continued to watch.
that's right. You see, because then we also have, I think also with the car dog attempt on the car dog, uh,
Mhm.
we also have, uh, it perplexes even Bronx County Detective Jim Fay. Who drove the car?
No, that's the Netto. That's the Netto
That's
dog.
the Neto. Yeah, who drove
Yeah.
the car?
Right.
Who drove him away in the car? So and I also start to say psychologically, and I'm not going into a vast cult. I find Yonkers to be pretty weird with all of these German Shepherd killings.
It is strange about how just in this one geographical area of like a 1 mile radius in Yonkers, there just seems to be a ton of German Shepherd killings. I mean, but I'm doing a show this Thursday called Why Untermeyer Park Had Nothing to Do with Son of Sam, where I'm going to reintroduce all that old Untermeyer Park footage, Mr. E, Byrne, Lorenzo, Tommy, and we're going to see their testimony about the occultists there. And I'm going to, lay out the argument that they had nothing to do with Son of Sam.
He says there,
So
he's
Gabriel brings up a good point right here, Eric, that I thought too. If he visited his nearby family as soon as he returned, it could be possible. Yes, that's the only way it could be possible. And so the question I have, and this is a serious question that should be posed to Berkowitz if anyone is lucky or enough to speak to him, I guess. What was your relation with Susan Sugar and with Robert Sugar? The
Well,
two
that's
people,
exactly what I said. When he was
right?
demobilized, how do we know initially he first went back to live in the Bronx and not for a while in Yonkers? And even if he didn't live with his family members in Yonkers, or he could go from the Bronx to visit his family, because we now know there's a friendly intimacy.
Yeah, I mean, in fact, he loved his uncle Leo, who lived in Scarsdale. Now, Scarsdale is not near Yonkers per se, but it's within a 20-minute drive of Yonkers. And so Berkowitz had a familiarity with Westchester, and also he writes in these letters that we're not gonna talk about today, about his propensity to roam, and he was doing it since he was a teenager. He was taking many, many mile-long walks as a teenager. Then it became his bike rides. He would ride up all the way to Armonk, which is like 50 miles. And then I believe when he got his car, he roamed around, and I believe that's when he found Wicker. But anyway, it's all speculation, Eric. There's really not much we
A
can
lot
do.
of lonely people who are even sane and good and saintly do travel a lot all on their own. They do the same agenda every day. But
Right.
where he says it's a hoax, that hoax, that really falls for me flat on its face when he says this is a hoax, the son of Sam,
Hmm.
that he wrote. It falls flat on its face, and very rarely, you know me, do I insist.
Let me go find that real quick. So I'll put that up real. So Sam Carr and the Demons, a hoax.
Yeah,
So this is the March 20th letter.
Yeah, it falls on its face because he says that Sam Carr or the Cars with Cassara were the matches that lit the fuse.
Right, exactly. So I believe that those letters in his apartment were not a ruse. I believe that that reflected his deteriorating mindset. I
Maybe
don't
he's
think that
using the word hoax. He's misusing it.
maybe but I believe that I personally believe he was serious in those letters. I don't believe those letters were fake.
No, no, not at
I
all.
believe the apartment setting up the apartment was fake. But I don't believe that those letters were fake. They just were.
And when we get to August 1st, you're going to see what I kind of analyzed about that.
All right, well, why don't we get right to it? Let's get to August 1st because this is a 3-page letter and we have a lot to unpack. So, would you like to read a little bit? Oh, wait, one thing that would actually be a good little preface for this letter is the sidebar on top of it. So, Berkowitz puts in a very interesting uh thing from a fortune cookie. A dog is not considered a good dog because he is a good barker. A man is not considered a good man because he is a good talker. So this to me shows an incredibly messed up mindset vis-a-vis dogs. Eric, I need a break.
I'm sorry. Damn it. I had August 1st here. I've really screwed this show up. I'm sorry.
What happened?
I left the other page in the kitchen.
So go find it and I'll start reading, okay?
Yeah, I'm terribly sorry, everybody.
So anyhow, we'll forgive you, Eric. It's okay. All right. So August 1st, 1979. This is a 3-page letter, guys. This is a doozy. This has everything in it that you need to know about why I did it and also how I did it. Okay. Thank you for coming up on July 30th, 31st. Your visits do help me break the monotony of prison life. The people who sat next to us were very nice and they minded their own business. We were lucky, however. This isn't always the case, as some people have a tendency to stare. I developed a case of xenophobia as the result. You had asked me about animals, especially dogs. Well, now I see that I have a lot to clarify. I do love dogs, despite the fact that I shot several. Like people, there are the quote good dogs, and then there are the quote bad ones. The good dogs I like better than people sometimes. They are trustworthy and loyal. Most of all, they are disciplined and they don't bark, yelp, or howl unnecessarily. These dogs make wonderful pets and companions. Unfortunately, there are also the bad ones. These evil creatures are the ones like Mr. Cassara's 2 dogs who barked without ceasing and caused me untold heartaches and mental suffering. These creatures of hell are like Mr. Samcar's dog who yelped all day long and into the evening. Not only did he emit these god-awful sounds, but he emitted them without reason or provocation. He barked, literally, at nothing. He barked just because he was chained up all day to a post and left behind the house by his master, Mr. Carr, who obviously is an inconsiderate slob. Eric, let's deal with this in chunks.
Well, right here, it's the dog of Cassara, but then in August 2nd, it's Cassara who's one of the people who's the cause of lighting the match.
Right. So he's saying here he's blaming Cassara.
He's merging man and animal together. There's no distinction. It's just like harassing the Netus. You harass the Netus, but then eventually you kill the dog.
Not quite following your logic there, Eric.
Well, he kills the animal. He kills goes after he's annoyed by the dogs, but the dogs become the people. And the people become the dogs.
Right. Mr. Carr, who obviously is an inconsiderate slob, right? And these evil creatures, Mr. Cassara's. Right, exactly. There's also shades of Son of Sam letters in here.
Yeah.
He barked, hold on, because he was chained up all day to a post left behind the house.
And that paragraph also proves to us that what he calls a hoax on March 20th is not a hoax.
I agree. Yeah, you're right, because he's now reverting back to his delusional state like he was in the apartment letters.
Right. And this, in my sense, he makes a personification of Harvey and Rocket, for example.
So
They
let's
become
carry.
personified.
Why don't you take the next 3 paragraphs?
Okay.
Likewise.
Likewise, 18 Wicker Street and 22 Wicker Street had dogs too. They weren't common dogs in that they had a fetish for barking at anything that moved within a radius of 100 feet from their fence. Be it man or squirrel, they verbally assaulted it with their vocal cords. They were also big dogs with huge vocal cords. This didn't help. He was
Right. Right.
interpreting words.
Verbally assaulted. Right. The dogs now have become humans.
Right. This is where I say he merges man and human.
Yeah, interesting
Where the
insight.
dogs take on almost, because he hears the dogs speaking as if they were human beings. These dogs, therefore, are become a personification of their owners, and their owners represent the dogs that push him to light the fuse for his murders.
For his dynamite, right.
This letter here annihilates whatever he means by the Son of Sam letters that he wrote, like an artistic stream of consciousness, as if he was a beat poet, just streaming things out.
Uh-huh.
It wasn't a hoax.
I don't think it was a hoax either. I think he was really insane.
Yeah.
All right, why don't you take the next one?
Loud, excessive, and annoying noises have always been my weak point. I cannot bear these sounds, a chorus of barks, yelps, and howls, which continued throughout the day. I couldn't read, relax, sleep, or even watch television with these intrusions. This is how bad it was.
So, Eric, right here is shades of the letter that he sent to Sam Carr. You evil human being, you child of the devil with your dog. I can't relax. I can't make love to my wife. So he's reverting back here on August 1st, 1979, a couple months after he said it was a hoax. He's reverting back to the crazy David Berkowitz of the apartment letters.
Who can't make love to his wife?
Berkowitz was writing that in his letter to Sam Carr. All right, why don't you take the next one?
Yes. If you could hear what horrid sounds those bad dogs were making, then you could very well understand my motives. A last resort for shooting them. It was an act of desperation. You can disagree all you want, but it's true. I had tried phone calls, letters, everything, including calls to the police. Then in block letters, nothing but nothing was done. I was then forced to use more extreme measures. Molotov cocktails, shootings, etc. I had no choice. Molotov cocktails.
Weird, because the Molotov cocktail was being thrown into a bedroom, not at the dog.
Right. And the Molotov cocktail was thrown when?
May 13th, 1976.
Right. The Natu house.
Correct. And also one in, I believe one in at the car. Definitely one at the car house too. I don't remember what date that was.
Yeah, I think one of their rooms went on fire.
Yeah. Don't forget, I tried to correct the situation by moving on several occasions. Each time my rent went up more and more, and I moved again and again. Each move put me farther away from the city and my job. Obviously, I tried to dodge these evil people, these selfish people, these inconsiderate people, but to no avail. This is very interesting because in The Ultimate Evil, Eric, Maury treats it as a mystery why Berkowitz kept on moving from the Bronx to New Rochelle, then to further Yonkers. He said the moves made no sense. Anybody who remembers The Ultimate Evil will remember this. The move made no sense because it was further from his job and the rents were higher and higher.
That's poor investigative journalism on the part of Terry.
He's telling you right here the exact reasons.
If this man, Terry, can analyze where a car was parked, where a shooting took place, and where eventually the car was driving the shooter, he could have gone out of his way to actually analyze just why he lived in New Rochelle, Yonkers, and the Bronx, why he moved to where he did. New Rochelle, Uh, was Faulkner in New Rochelle?
Faulkner had a storefront slash warehouse. Let's not get into that again. He had a storefront warehouse in New Rochelle. Yes.
Yeah, and he speaks here of a Bronx superintendent.
Well, let's get to that. So let me take the next paragraph. No, Dr. Abrahamsen, I don't hate all dogs, only those that have no consideration for humankind. I have to take that sentence. Sorry, I have to deal with this. Dogs that have consideration for humankind. He's assigning human mindsets to an animal.
That's exactly what I said before. He merges man and canine.
Their masters are also just as guilty. Sam Carr of Yonkers, the residents of 18 and 22 Wicker Street, Jack Cassara of New Rochelle, and the superintendent of 2150 Holland Avenue in the Bronx are all scum and slobs. They deserved my attacks.
There you have it. He says they are all just as guilty. Now, if they are just as guilty, why does he then later write, I think it's August 2nd, I'm not making them scapegoats?
Let me look at my August 2nd here.
They're just as guilty. They're just as guilty, he writes.
Yeah. Yes, exactly. Right. I'm not trying to use Sam Carr or anyone as a scapegoat. And here he is using them as a scapegoat.
That's right. Well, he's actually saying, what does he say here? He says they are all just as guilty.
Right.
Because he's saying just as he's guilty, they are guilty. But when you have a scapegoat, I think the scapegoat more or less is somebody who says, you say, well, he's at fault. He's the one who did it. Look at what happened to me.
I think he was referring to the dogs as guilty, not himself as guilty.
Mm-hmm.
As far as noise is concerned, I can't tolerate loud playing of television sets either. Alas, Craig Glassman enters the picture. This creature, there again, putting right. This creature, let me get to the next page, is of the most inconsiderate of the whole animal kingdom.
Yeah, he's a creature.
At 2 a.m., his TV was playing at a volume that sent chills through my spine and vibrated my bed as if I was sleeping on a subway car. Now, this is true. In Glassman's book, he does talk about how he would often play his television late at night. He couldn't sleep. He would play his TV. So I don't know how loud it was, but it is true that Glassman would play that TV late at night. If
So
you understand, go ahead, Eric.
We have once again, though, of a merging of a man with the animal, with an animal.
Right.
He calls him a creature. And it's very much the way he was influenced in Kentucky of merging Christ and the occult.
You're absolutely right. I mean, these are really great insights. I've never once even made these connections whatsoever, but the whole merging of man and animal is kind of interesting because that you can see how he could then have justification to kill. If he doesn't consider a human anymore, but an animal, well, there you go. It's much easier to kill an animal, not me. I'm not speaking personally, but it would be much easier for, if you had a choice, kill a dog or kill that human, probably most people would choose to kill the dog.
And you and everyone go back and see, I'm sure in the McGraw-Hill letter, he really expresses this type of vehemence towards people.
Right. In the first McGraw-Hill letter. It's actually the first letter of the entire document dump.
Mm-hmm.
All right. So here we go. I just acted out of desperation and because violence was all that they would understand. This was the last straw. Yes. Yet all I sought was peace and quiet. It has been said that I have a split personality like Jekyll and Hyde. Everybody has these two personalities in them. It is a dual personality, but not schizophrenia. Eric, please take the next paragraph. I need to go. My phone is ringing. I need to turn that off.
Okay. It starts. The next paragraph starts. I just asked.
There are two sides to my behavior. Go grab.
There are two sides to my behavior. I go to both extremes. There isn't need to mention my evil, sadistic, and homicidal side. It's been fully published. However, that's a very interesting sentence. It's been fully published. We'll get back to that.
Okay.
However, much to people's surprise, I do have a good side. I often gave to charity an amount much larger than what others would give. When the ladies would come around my apartment in the Bronx, I would often give $5 or $10 to their polio crusade, while others only gave $1 at the most. Doing this made me feel very good. When I gave, I felt very humane and nice. I actually felt this. Now, this is a very important sentence here, because a paragraph, because what's been fully published
Well, I guess his
on the Sam letters.
well, no, the homicidal. He's saying I don't need to mention my evil sadistic side. It's been fully published. Yeah, the only thing that's been published was his Son of Sam, right?
And the news reports.
Right.
But he goes into he is deep into psychology. I think it's pop culture when they say, well, we have two sides within us, Jekyll and Hyde. You have to remember that Dr. Jekyll had a chemical that transformed him. It wasn't as if another personality came out and he had a multiple personality, or that you're dealing with one Jekyll and Hyde is not schizophrenia. It's
Right.
two different personalities.
One thing I had wished that I had done, and maybe I'll find it and put it up on my Twitter account. This paragraph here is exact confirmation, total corroboration from the man himself of what we heard from Ed Davis. When I had the interview with Ed Davis and Dave about Ace Brown, Ed told me about how his uncle, who lived on Pine Street, right next to 35 Pine Street, one morning woke up and found a letter on his car saying, "Hey, I'm really sorry I crashed into your car. I created this little dent. I'm going to take care of it. Please call me David Berkowitz, 965 apartment 7E." So David Berkowitz, and this is why I'm saying that these letters are, I think, the closest to the truth we're ever going to get. David Berkowitz in this paragraph writes about his good side, and we have already heard about his good side. So it's corroboration of what we've already uncovered about this guy.
How he likes to give to charity, and when he gives, he really gives.
Right.
So it's also outside of the well-planned. It's not planned that he hits somebody's car. So he doesn't allow it to be a part of his plan and just drive away.
Right.
He stops and admits that he did it. And it's quite interesting.
Writes a friendly letter. All right, I'm going to take the next paragraph. I did favors for several of the elderly tenants in my old Bronx building, such as carry out their garbage or go to the store for them. Their favorite store was Olinsky's, a supermarket on Leidig Avenue. In Yonkers, I gave the newsboy nice tips for my weekly deliveries of the local paper and a nice tip for Christmas. His name was Frank, and he lived in the apartment next door with his sisters and mother. They were wonderful people, a rare breed. Any thoughts on that, Eric?
Well, yes, it actually reflects upon how he likes family.
Right. He does.
And the way he always speaks affectionately of his family, or notices things about his family, like his sister Rosalind.
Right.
And it's just that it goes to show you. I mean, it is also rather frightening, though, that somebody who can be so kind and charitable, we never know what they actually might totally be like.
Exactly. And
it makes me think of the case in Kansas of Bind, Torture, Kill. BTK, right. Who was the community man, charity, church, everything.
I wonder, though, if there's a certain aspect of these people like Berkowitz, when he's committing an act of kindness, whether he feels perversely satisfied doing that, knowing, whether, you know what I'm saying? Like, he's contrasting it in his own mind to this bad side. I wonder if when he's doing this good stuff, if he's thinking, see, now I'm doing good stuff, right?
Well, that's a confabulation. That's great on your side. That's a confabulation in psychology, where you confabulate that, oh, well, yes, I did something wrong, but look, I've made up for it. I'm a good person.
Right. But I also
bad.
No, I get that. But what I'm actually wondering is if when he was doing this good stuff, if secretly he was getting off on the fact that he was also doing all this bad stuff. He doesn't write that in here. He doesn't give any indication of one way or the other. But like, I wonder if he was helping that old woman while he was carrying her groceries, if he was thinking to myself, yeah, and I could kill you too, and not even bat an eye,
Oh, I
like.
wouldn't doubt that maybe that crossed through his mind. I wouldn't doubt that at all.
Right. I mean, I'm just speculating, but he talks about being so good, but I just wonder while when they're doing good, if he was kind of getting off on the whole I'm fooling everybody bit. All right. I can't remember all the better things I did with my life, but they were an acceptable number. Likewise, I cannot remember all my evil doings. There's a good and evil in all of us. We all have the potential to murder. I don't.
I certainly don't have the potential. That gets back to what I said about God didn't create us insane.
Right. I have the potential to kill in defense of my loved ones, or if I had to, but I don't have the potential to murder. I've
No.
never, right. We
Mm-mm.
all have evil and sadistic fantasies. I don't have any sadistic fantasies.
No.
We
Mm-mm.
too have homicidal fantasies at times. All right. I admit every now and then I have had a homicidal fantasy. I think any normal person does. I'm not serious about it, but if someone cuts you off in the line, or if someone screws you over at work, yeah, sometimes you're like, oh, I wish that guy would die. But I don't ever have fantasies really about like killing people. Never.
No, fantasy is really almost as if you're creating a
You're
piece of music.
creating it, right? Maybe what I was meaning was like a homicidal flash of thought, like if someone does you wrong in the moment. So
Mhm,
scratch what I said. I've never had a homicidal fantasy in my life.
mhm.
But due to a series of circumstances, our negative thoughts become actions and we turn to antisocial behavior as a result. So here he is exonerating himself.
Yeah, yeah. Well, that's it. That's what I said about the confabulation. He
Right.
he says, "Well, look, I do good things. I do a lot of good things." And there was Andy Warhol had a crazy life. I know nothing about his life, but there was certainly a lot of weird things that went on at his factory. But he never missed mass on Sunday
Mm.
and prayed the Holy Rosary every day. Now, I can't judge the man. There's a complex character there. He certainly wasn't a murderer.
It is interesting to note my changes in behavior and actions during the daylight hours and at sunset. They were two opposites. At night, I hunted. In the day, I helped. I became vicious and lethal at night to people I never even knew before and whom I just met by chance. On the other hand, during the day, I was kind, friendly, and courteous to other motorists and pedestrians, also neighbors and strangers. However, these two extremes I cannot explain. This is where you, Dr. Abrahamsen, come in. Maybe you can say why. Coincidentally, I never managed to shoot anyone in my sister's neighborhood. Now, his sister lives in Glen Oaks in Queens.
And this is interesting.
The streets were narrow, winding, and dark. There were also plenty of unlit parking lots and spots between those garden apartments. Actually, I hunted for victims in Glen Oaks, and that's in Queens, more than anywhere else. I shot two girls in Floral Park, a mere 7 blocks from my sister's homes. That's Lomino Damasi. So here he is saying that he shot Lomino Damasi. I know the conspiratorialists will say, no, it was John Carr. It has to be John Carr, left-handed, parted in the side hair. He's saying that he shot Lomino Damasi right here. He's saying exactly where they were, Floral Park, mere 7 blocks from his sister's home. He's very well versed with Queens. However, I just wasn't lucky at scoring in the Glen Oaks neighborhood. I don't know what motivated me to hunt there so often. For some reason, I felt the need to slay someone in Glen Oaks, in and around my sister's house. Perhaps I wanted to scare her or the kids, her kids. I'll never understand things sometimes. Sometimes we do things without a conscious idea of why we're doing it. Often we don't even have a conscious motive, but we do it. The mind is a puzzle.
Well, I don't know where these people get off saying that John Carr did it. Because
Well, because Maury Terry said that he did it because of the left-handedness.
But John Carr, am I wrong in saying that John Carr wasn't even living in New York at the time?
It's unclear, but John Carr was not living. He might have been traveling to New York, but he wasn't living in New York at the time.
Who did the analysis that the shooting was by a left-handed person?
Well, it was only because of in Maury Terry's book that he said that the eyewitnesses said it was left-handed. But then when you listen to the actual eyewitnesses, They're not even really sure. They're like, it could have been, yeah, left-handed. They're being kind of coerced by the questioners. It's not really that fair an interview. I came out of that with no conclusions whatsoever.
You can't. It's like a traffic accident. 50 people will tell 50 different stories.
Exactly. The lady did say it was Berkowitz, though, and here he is saying that he shot them. So, I'm just going to take Berkowitz's word for it at this point. I mean, I have no other evidence. I have no evidence of process involvement. I have no evidence Billy the artist ever existed. I have no evidence Mr. Real Estate existed. So I have to go with what's in front of me and and the evidence that I do have.
Now,
So here,
yeah,
go ahead, Eric.
these next two paragraphs are two of the most indicative of contradiction to when he speaks about everything was well planned.
I had no plans for the attack, so to speak. However, I did have a general idea of where I would be going in search of victims. So I familiarized myself with the streets and possible escape routes from those general areas. Also, I managed to learn all the streets by repeated trips into the area. Known to roam, guys. Okay.
Mhm.
I mean, that there were nights in which I traveled all through a certain area, but it turned unproductive. Naturally, I got to know the streets by this method too. Extremely important paragraph there. He's
Very
saying
important.
he's saying here that he went out, he scoped out the areas, he planned the attacks, the escape routes, he knew the areas very well, he knew all the streets, he had been roaming around. Towards the end of my spree, I developed a keen perception of police tactics. I began to figure out just when and where a cop car would pass or where a stakeout car would be parked. I got really good at this. Expert.
Well, he had been with the auxiliary police, so he could
Correct.
catch on quickly
He
about routine and everything.
he knew all of their tactics already. He knew how to use scanners, and by this time he was already had roamed around New York City ever since he was 15 years old as an auxiliary and fire auxiliary person.
And a law enforcement intelligence agent friend of mine has said these auxiliary police, a lot of us don't care for them because they become friendly with the guy at the desk and they're able to gain far too much information,
They're
which
also a lot of them are also buffs. So like a lot of them end up committing crimes in order to be the savior. Sounds like Berkowitz had a little bit of that in him as well.
definitely.
In many of the residential neighborhoods, especially Queens and the Bronx, the police cars would develop patterns as to when they would patrol through a certain area. These were all low crime sectors in which violent crime is almost non existent, and the police are not in demand to answer calls constantly, such as the South Bronx. After a while, I was able to spot an unmarked car regardless of its disguise. Some were taxicabs, some were beat up old rattle traps, but they were police cars just the same, and I made them. Unmarked police vans were also a frequent sight. I
Well,
had to
go ahead.
go ahead.
He had a lot of police knowledge because my late friend David Brilla, I can name him, who was in intelligence and police. We're driving just on Rockaway Boulevard. I'm looking at a car that looks like just your neighbor's car. And he could say that's an unmarked police car. How these people know it, I don't know, but it's incredible.
Right, and I totally believe that Berkowitz. We already know through people like John Comparetto et al. That Berkowitz was a police buff. He knew all of this stuff. He used that to commit his crimes. It's obvious. I had developed a mental warning and caution device in my mind, and it worked. While shooting these people, I actually became transfixed with the event. The report of the gun, the screams, the shattering of glass and windshields, the blaring horn. It all just possessed my mind so that I'd take no notice of anything else. During the first incident, I had become so transfixed that I could not move until that car horn started blasting in the quiet night. That horn brought me back to reality in a way. I got back my senses and realized what I had done and just took off running to my car.
And do you see another contradiction psychologically? He wants to be in control of the noise. He can't take any noise or anything, but here he's getting on a high by the noise that he's causing.
Ah, Eric, I knew that there was a reason why I picked you to do this show with me.
Yeah, I'm very embarrassed. I had to get up to get papers.
Don't worry. That's
I'm
called
embarrassed. I'm drinking water today. I don't like to do that with a bottle. Please forgive me.
that's
But you
called
see,
life.
this just hit upon me. He is in control. He's in control. He wants to be the main man.
I think you are absolutely
Control the
right.
noise. He wants to control the thunder and the sun.
Very interesting.
The report. Let's see this. Back there where he says, "I can't stand noise." I forget which letter that is. I hate all forms of noise. I can't.
Uh, uh,
It's in.
I shot. There are bad ones, the evil ones. Here we go.
Mhm.
Loud, excessive, or annoying noises have always been my weak points. I cannot bear these sounds, a chorus of barks, yelps, and howls, which continued throughout the day.
Right, and yet here he says the
He's trans.
the report of the gun, the screams, the shattering of glass and windshields, the blaring horn. It all just possessed my mind, so that I take no notice of anything else. I became so transfixed that I could not move until the car horn started blasting in the quiet night. That horn brought me back to reality in a way. That noise brings him back to reality, but yet his
Other
reality is annoyed by a television set or a barking dog.
interesting insights. I don't really know what to say other than
He
very
wants to
interesting.
control. He wants to control.
I don't mean that I departed reality. I knew what I was doing. I knew right from wrong, and I knew that my gun could snuff out someone's life. However, I developed such an obsession to do what I did. All the laws or promises of the gas chamber couldn't get me to stop or turn back. I was transfixed, true, but I wasn't sexually aroused. First, because violence doesn't turn me on. Second, even if it did, I'd have been too nervous to get an erection. To get one, I'd have to be relaxed and at ease. There is no way I could relax knowing I was about to commit a felony crime and take some lives. These weren't sex crimes. Passion may have been involved, but it wasn't directly sexual. The victims were pretty, but I had no desire to have sex with them at the time. I have looked at their pictures often, though. I have had fantasies about them that were sexual, but I'm no rapist. I'm not capable of that. I have to end here for now. Yours truly, David Berkowitz. So those are the letters that we're dealing with today. I think that was a really good primer for Psychiatric Sunday,
Mhm.
and gave clear insight into why he did it. Eric, what I'm gleaning, his life circumstances, being alone, the pressure of having no relationship, a dead end job, all of these noises that were according to him, destroying his life. I really think that he just says it right here. He reached a tipping point and the people lit the match, which then blew up the dynamite. What do
Right.
you think?
I agree with you. Uh, he, although there seems to be his reality is that they lit the match, but they're also the cause and just as guilty.
Right.
It's the victimhood thing.
Right. He does have a very big victim mentality.
But there's one other thing, though. He didn't plan whom he was going to later kill, but there is a plan. He says it's all planned out. He knows how he's going to go after the type of people he wants to go after. He has it planned that he's going to do these killings.
Mhm.
He almost seems to be going around Queens as if it was like also a military maneuver.
Yeah, totally.
The way they fought, the way they have people go forth first to really map everything out.
And this became so obvious to me, and it became obvious to the crowd too when I started doing my walk and talks of the shooting sites, because both at the Bronx site and at the Eliphas site in Queens and at the Glen Oaks site and in not Glen Oaks, the Lomino Damasi in Floral Park, and even to a lesser extent the Carl Denaro shooting, all within very, very close distance to escape routes, highway entrances. It was clear to me as a layman driving those areas, sometimes for the first time ever in my life, that he had been there before and he had scoped it out. I even commented it in the video.
Yeah, yeah. He knew exactly where he wanted to go, and yet he didn't find anything militarily that he would attack in Glen Oaks.
Well, he said the streets were too narrow. That just didn't work right. Militarily, it didn't work.
Yeah, it was like a military maneuver the way he went out with everything.
What
Everything.
the hell? We got this is giving me a nightmare, but I'm gonna put this person on.
Hello, I'm in defense of barking dogs. We talk.
How are you? I know who you are. But I'm not say who you are.
We are here. We do talk. We do talk.
This is great.
Hey, I am good. How?
So why don't Bow Wow, do me a favor, turn your YouTube off so we can.
Turn your YouTube off.
I just turned it off. I remembered.
You know, this is actually going to give me a real. This is going to give me a nightmare tonight. I swear to God.
You guys, we exist. Berkowitz is not crazy.
Oh my God! Wait, hold on. We got to put this person up.
Hello, I am Bow Wow, the talking dog. Do you have any questions?
Bow Wow, give us some insight into Berkowitz and
what you guys.
Bow Wow, hold on, Bow Wow. Tell us about what you said to Berkowitz.
I told him to bite Sam Carr's nut meat. And he did. Right.
Well, Bow Wow,
we
want to say thank you, Bow Wow. Appreciate it.
Take care, Bow.
I was waiting for that to happen. That's actually going to give me nightmares tonight. Huh?
A great mask.
Yeah. I mean, when I saw that come up for the first time, I was like, this is scary as shit. I'm not going to sleep well tonight. This is going to, that got into my consciousness, Bow Wow.
Darren Cruz put up something about what were the motives.
What do you mean? What were the motives?
He had put up in the chat, but still, what are some of the motives for Berkowitz doing this? I think we have the motives.
Yeah, and we'll get back to them right here. He just says here, the motives were all in the August 1st letter.
Yeah.
The dog's barking. He writes here, he in the May 16th letter, read the 2nd, 3rd, and 4th paragraph. And in this, he talks about going crazy and how he read all the demonology. And then here it said that the noise and the pressure and the frustration that developed in and around and inside me, I couldn't stifle my built-up anger, and how everyone was lighting his fuses, so to speak. So we have put up some of his motivations. Yeah, what I'm going to do.
Your answer, Darren. It's right there, August 1st, right?
Yeah. And what I'm going to do is I think I want to do a Why I Did It Part 2. I think that's what was going to be next week, although that might change because there's still other letters that we have to deal with. It's just that I don't want these shows to go 3 hours long.
But you know, I just have to add like this. The fact that the dog, or a specific type of dog, it's rather eerie that it's such an object of discussion for so many people in Yonkers. Fred Deagle, Wheat Car, the two mystery men, Mr. E, and Caveman.
Yeah, dogs are just all over this story. Hey, Stellar, how are you, my friend?
Hey, how's it going?
Good. What's up?
Good. Sorry, I'm looking a little ragged. I wasn't planning on being on camera, but
that's fine.
I was just going to comment because
Stellar, 1 second, real quick. 1 second, real quick, Stellar. Your audio is a little bit not syncing correctly with your video. So if it looks like I'm looking at you like, huh, what's going on? That's the only reason why. But I can hear you fine. It's just this.
And you look fine.
Yeah, you look great.
All right, thanks. Appreciate it. Yeah, I was the one writing the comment about the motives. Darian Cruz Music is my other channel. But
okay.
The question I had was, in the letter, it looked like he said, I know the motives for some of the murders. So that was my question. Why that specific wording as opposed to all of them?
All of them. Right. Do you remember what letter that was in?
I don't.
I mean, I guess it doesn't really matter.
Yeah.
The letter what?
No, it was the letter to his doctor, but I don't remember which letter it was.
Okay. I guess it doesn't matter if he said some. So yeah, I mean, it's a good question, but I don't have an answer to it. There's still questions that only Berkowitz can answer, unfortunately. And that's That's the big conundrum of this whole thing. So
and I did have one. Oh, sorry.
No.
I had
Go
one
ahead.
other question. I don't know. Related. I know you'd mentioned Billy the Artist earlier, which I've heard you mention that you don't really think he existed.
Hell no.
And I don't know. I don't know who he is either. But I have heard others say they do have a name for whoever it was that supposedly appeared in the A&E.
Yeah, they call him Tony Roach.
That person. Yeah, is that a real person? Is that
I've never heard. Tony Roach is the name of a that's a mob name. Tony Roach. I've heard that name in a mob movie. I've heard that name in actually in one of Fuzz 1's books about a guy who hung out down at Mosholu Parkway train station. His name was Tony Roach. But no one in Yonkers has ever heard of Tony Roach or Billy the Artist. None of that. And if you look at his pictures, the drawings that he did, I'm gonna have a show next week on Untermeyer Park, and I'll put this in. His pictures that he drew are photographs. They're like, if you look at the photograph of who he was drawing, it's the exact. Maury gave this guy photographs and he drew the pictures. That's what that was all about. I will go to my grave.
Do you think the person that did the drawings is the same person, regardless of who they are? But do you think it's the same person that was interviewed in the A&E?
I have no clue. I have no clue. I don't think that I think that whole thing was just another Maury hoax. I think he hoaxed us with Brother John. I think he hoaxed us with with pretty much everything. Because so far, I started out, as you know, Darian, right? Trying to prove him right, and I couldn't. So,
Stella, did you say it said some motives here in paragraph 2? It's true motives.
What letter? What letter?
May 16th.
Okay.
Because
what paragraph?
Paragraph 2. You did 2, 3, and 4 today. He says, I've known the true motives for quite some time.
Oh, committed most of those crimes. That's what it was. So same thing that Stellar said, but slightly different wording.
Yeah.
It's a good question. I mean, it's an absolutely good question. One that I don't have the answer to, because I'm not like the end all be all. I'm analyzing this just like you guys are.
But he's keeping a secret about it though. Because he says that he knows the true motives.
That's true. And it says here, nobody knows the reason but me and perhaps one day you.
Yeah, but he says because of fear in hurting certain persons. So who are the persons that will be hurt if he opens up and tells us why?
And why would they be hurt?
Right, exactly. And this is where people could be, get into the whole conspiratorial angle. And I would be down with the conspiracy angle if we just had proof. If we just had one line in here that said, I was working with other people. There were other Satanists behind me. I was in part of a crew. Instead, we get none of that. It's just all me, myself, and I did it. I did this. I did that.
But he's teasing. I don't think he's teasing us, but he's telling us there's more to be revealed. There's a revelation.
True. So, Stellar, before we end, what I want to take your temperature. Where are you at right now with all this?
Oh man. Well, I mean, definitely a lot of that stuff from the Ultimate Evil, doesn't seem to be panning out in terms of what a lot of people thought for so many years, after reading that book for sure.
Right.
I'm still not 100% that he acted alone. I still, I'm still not convinced of that. I think there's a lot of circumstantial evidence pointing that he may have.
Right.
But I think there's more also just circumstantial evidence pointing to the fact that maybe he didn't.
Right.
I think there's still more of that, even though none of it's really hardcore evidence that would be used like in a trial or anything like that.
Right. And I can feel that.
I'm still leaning towards that. I'm leaning more towards not alone. It's just hard to, the guy lies so much too. It's just tough to say.
That's what's tough.
He said I did all of them, and he also said I didn't do all of them.
Right. And then he also went to Maury and said, yeah, you're right. Right, exactly. And he also said to Maury. Exactly. And what's interesting is that we're going to get to it eventually. These letters to the psychiatrist talk about not Maury, but about the Leipzig affair and the whole coming conspiracy with the cult. They do talk about that in these letters. And
Leipzig, how's he spelling that?
Lipsig. And in these letters, not Maury, David basically says, I didn't know John Carr. I don't want to participate with Leipzig. That had nothing to do with the cult at all.
Was there a Leipzig?
Yeah, he was a lawyer and it's in The Ultimate Evil.
MIT.
He questions Berkowitz in the prison, and they use that as proof that that Berkowitz knew John Carr. But I say I would like to see that entire transcript of the Lipsig interview, because we've already seen how Maury selectively edits things out, right? I want to see that entire
You can
transcript.
really be conspiratorial about that. You made me jump because there's a book called The Leipzig Connection in German, Leipzig, about where behaviorist psychology began in Switzerland with Wundt.
No, we're not going down that road. But no, Lipsig. Anyway, listen, Stellar, Darian, awesome call, man. I appreciate it as always.
Thank you.
All right.
Thanks a lot.
Thank
you,
We'll talk to you
guys.
soon, my friend. Take care.
I do take into consideration before we go, one man did speak about him taking lysergic acid dithylamide, which is LSD. And John Comparetto said he was informed by Berkowitz that he was taking LSD and other drugs that could affect a person.
Oh, hell yeah. It doesn't have to be MK Ultra, but he definitely took LSD, bombed his mind out, in fact.
I don't think it was MK Ultra, because where is the programming? What's the purpose?
Yeah, and who did it? And what's the,
change in our lives? I can tell you, I'm not a cynic and I'm not cold, but even though they were interviewing people in the neighborhoods, what did it change in society? I think the only thing it did was enhance people's interest in crime.
That's true. All right, Eric. Well, I think our first Psychiatric Sunday was a big success. We had almost 90 people watching. We had it for a Sunday morning. That's great. It's kind of like nicer, relaxing time. We don't have to worry about lots of graphics. We can do a lot of talking and a lot of speculating. So, Eric, why don't you say goodbye to the audience, and then I'll take them on out.
God bless everybody. Stay well. And once again, my apologies for running back for 2 sheets I thought I had with me.
Eric, on behalf of the audience, I will say apology accepted. You're doing just fine, my friend. All right, stick around. I'll see you in a minute. All right, guys. Well, hey, that was a fun one. Exactly what I envisioned when Eric and I came up with Psychiatric Sunday. And so this is going to be a regular series. We're going to shoot for every Sunday at 11, so you can set your clock by it. We still have Manny Monday, every Monday at 6. And so from here on out, you will be getting 2 weekly series in addition to any other pop-up that may come up. We have a lot to deal with. I'm probably going to be heading to Puerto Rico in November to stay for several months. So there's going to be a break in the action. So I want to get as much as we possibly can before that date comes. But anyway, my friends, so every week will be a different topic on these letters. There's a ton to get through, tons of different topics, tons of different insights. But today I figured let's start with the foundation of it all, why I did it. And I think that in David Berkowitz's own words, we got a really, really good idea as to, well, why he did it. All right, guys, with that being said, thank you so much. We will see you tomorrow night on Manny Monday, where we have Gary and Mike joining us, where we will analyze the Judy Placido tape and talk about the life and times of Judy Placido, the Eliphas Disco, mid-70s New York City, and all sorts of fun stuff like that. All right. Have a great rest of your Sunday afternoon, folks. Thank you so much for joining us.